It's Viktor speaking, and I'm here today with Tsveti, and then we're going to be discussing today Mercury aspects. Now, one of the reasons why we chose Mercury was because Mercury talks about your skill set. It talks about what type of talent you might be having. So therefore, it's definitely something to consider when you want to choose your profession. By the way, I would like to make an announcement. We are going to be making how to spot money in your chart webinar on the 14th of June. You will learn about whether your money is going to be coming from lotteries or maybe inheritance. We're going to be looking at whether you are meant to be poor or rich, what type of indications we've got in the chart to make money, and how to overcome those psychological blockages as well, which might stop us making more as much as you desire, for instance. So hi Tsveti, how are you?
Hi, Victor. I'm doing great. Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me to do this video. I'm very excited about Mercury. This is not a very strong planet in my chart. So I'm always excited to learn something more about me as well while doing these videos.
Oh, great. By the way, if you guys want a reading from us, then you will be able to book a session either with Tsveti or myself as well. We will put the links in the description box. So, well, Tsveti, if you want to start, what would you say about Mercury? Why is it important for us to have a look at in vocational readings?
Well, it's important to look at Mercury because it's actually the skill set that we have. And this is actually what we're going to put in our CV as the skills that we have when we apply for a job. And yeah, and it also represents the analytical mind. So kind of how fast we're going to learn new skills at a new job if we change totally the position and the field that we work in. So, and also it will talk about how adaptive we are within a certain environment, working environment, because Mercury is actually the natural ruler of the third and the sixth house of Gemini and Virgo. So it will talk about the skill set, but also about the environment that we work in. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. As you said, Mercury rules the sign of Gemini, and Gemini is more about collecting the information. It's more about the learning style, more about how easy it is for you to pick up some type of information, knowledge. And then Virgo is all about the processing that. So Virgo is going to file it away. Virgo is going to be putting the information in the right sector of your mind. And the mind works in a mysterious way. Whenever you need an information, it just gets pulled out of one of the drawers. And that's pretty much Virgo. Virgo is associated with work because that's the natural ruler of sixth house. But in order for you to be able to work in a field, you're going to have to learn something, which is going to be the Gemini, the natural ruler of learning abilities. And of course, Gemini is ruled by Mercury. So that's how it links up. Of course, this Mercury's meaning is going to get differentiated, or we're going to have to, adjust a little bit when he has got connections to other planets.
Yeah.
Before we actually jump into the aspect part of it, I wanted to mention that this is going to be just a general description of, let's say, what Mercury and the Saturn dialogue might be about. However, you're going to have to take into account the house position as well as the sign position. Now, the sign position, and this is usually something I see with my students getting confused with. The sign position talks about how. So if I say, for instance, that, I don't know, the planet of Saturn, which is all about restriction, is in the sign of Libra, then it might be restricting us in some type of forms of connecting with others. So that's going to be something to do with the how part of the interpretation. And the house position is going to talk about in what area of life. So, for instance, if it happens in the 11th house, then you might be having a slight trouble of connecting with friends. And the reason why I wanted you to understand this, because especially with the positive aspects, which are trine and sextile, if you see any of those relating to Mercury, you're going to have to interpret the sign and the house position as well to get a better idea of what type of skill set you were born with. So, Tsveti, how do you see Mercury and the Sun dialogue?
Mercury and the Sun, the Sun is authority, and it's like it depends on how close they are to each other. Because if it's a conjunction, it's not the best thing, because the Sun will be burning Mercury, and Mercury will not somehow not have the word to say, what it thinks, and it will like cause some kind of inhibition of you showing your authority to the outside, so it can make the person quite shy into saying what they mean to say, and to show their authority in a way. So yeah, it can show some hardship in communication. Yeah.
Mercury is the planet of business, and alongside with the Sun, definitely I would say that some type of business opportunities could be on the horizon. There could be a great skill set there to open up your own business and, for instance, become an entrepreneur. Yes, I agree with you. The Mercury never goes more than 28 degrees away from the Sun. Therefore, the only aspect which could happen between those two planets is the conjunction. But we are differentiating two types of conjunction, and that's the exciting part of it. We've got the combustion, what Tsveti said, that Sun can burn Mercury. It means that Sun is so bright that it puts a shadow on the planet, whoever is very close by. And we're going to have a little bit of a struggle to use those skill sets to be able to shine with. So according to the ancient rules, this is going to be something between or up to 8.3 degrees. However, when Mercury is in the heart of the Sun, which means within 17 minutes, then actually definitely you should be looking at it as a planet of talents. That should be straight away a job you want to be picking. And Mercury is going to be talking about trading, sales, songwriting, and so forth. Now, this is exactly where the sign and the house position come into the picture. Because if it happens, let's say, in the sign of Taurus, which could really talk about, for instance, becoming a vocal coach, right? Taurus rules the throat. So you can have a Mercury skill set around something to do with the throat. And Sun talks about your own business. So maybe you just need to open up, for instance, a music studio or a singing competition even. And then once you've got that, then you're going to have a look at the house position. So maybe it's happening actually exactly in the third house. Well, third house talks about talent. So you know what? Go on X Factor and so on. Yes. So obviously we're not going to go through each house and sign today. We just wanted to give you a little bit of a knowledge of how to approach it. But definitely something to do with maybe event organizing could be very good. Sun is all about shining, Mercury is all about your skill set. So such events like a wedding organizer, for instance, I really can imagine, the brightest days of your life, basically. And that's something to do with graduation. That's something to do with baby shower, marriage, and all those type of things could really belong to this aspect.
Yeah, and I was also thinking about public relations as well, because when Mercury and the Sun are in a Cazimi position, like you said, the 17 minutes conjunction, then it's like you will be able to communicate the best, to show the best face of the company, of the authority that you represent. So yeah, public relations is a good option as well here.
Oh, sure. Anything to do with acting could really be something interesting. But you know what? Just as I said, a sales agent, maybe an agent who is going from town to town, um, because Mercury rules something to do with traveling, and the sun enjoys being in the spotlight anyway. So again, it could be a motivation speaker. It could be a TV presenter, for instance, if it happens in Libra. Just think about Oprah. She's got a Sun and Mercury conjunction, and that's a Cazimi. And she all started on TV.
Yeah, she's shining brightly.
Yes, it's in her third house as well, actually.
Oh,
So
great. So
no
that's why
wonder.
she's such a great communicator, and she can use the voice, to reach bigger audiences of people as well. So yeah, that's a wonderful position.
Great. Let's have a look at Mercury and Moon dialogue.
Mercury and Moon will be a very emotional Mercury. So somebody who will be taking care through communication, like also maybe teaching little children. I was thinking, because the moon is all about nurturing, taking care, or maybe Mercury and Moon could be a great real estate or property salesperson, because yeah, the moon rules real estate and lands and properties, and Mercury will be able to get the best price. So because it's also related to short travels, going to different places in order to show the property. So it's like communication with with small groups of people. And yeah, I think that and also being a teacher in nursery, in the kindergarten,
Hmm.
because Mercury also rules young people, children, and the moon is like taking care of them and showing them, teaching them the basic skills with Mercury, how to communicate, and the basic, knowledge of everyday life. So I think this is a good, yeah, manifestation of Mercury and Moon.
I think what's interesting about Mercury and the Moon contact in the chart is that the native might have got a great sense of how to feel the public's pulse, how to, or they are very good at figuring out what the public needs. So
Yeah.
again, there is a great sense here of a great business sense, but they could be very good at, for instance, those people who do some type of surveys in the streets, like which one do you prefer, why, and then processing the information and then building a business profile based on the public's opinion. By the way, Moon does rule public, so um, anything to do with social media, I think it's really, really great for them. So anything to do with the public sector could be very interesting for this combination. So maybe something to do with counseling, maybe something to do with social service, because Moon is your habitual responses to everyday activities. So I can imagine a counselor who is going to be following up on your habits. Have you managed to cut back on cigarette, for instance, and so forth, motivating you to do better, especially if there is a little bit of a Jupiterian connection as well.
Yeah.
Yes, do you have anything else to add?
Um, no, not really. I was only thinking that the moon was actually representative of the mom in the chart. So Mercury and moon together could be like an indication of the mom having some influence on the skill set that we have, and on our interests, on the mindset as a whole. So yeah, and us wanting to be like mothering others as well in some way, like helping them out with this nurturing energy through communication, like motivational talker, or this kind of stuff
Yeah, it's possible that you want to be stepping into your mom's footstep.
as well. Yeah.
Okay, let's have a look at Mercury and Venus aspects.
Mercury and Venus. Okay, this is a really artistic mind, and it goes back to the example that you gave with Taurus, because Taurus is ruled by Venus. So here the voice is like very much highlighted, but also Mercury and Venus together, they give a really great artistic mind and great imagination, I would say, and some feeling for harmony, for diplomacy. And I think that Mercury and Venus can be very good lawyers as well, because Venus is also the ruler of Libra, and Libra is all about balance, So having the skill set to diplomatically bring two conflicting parties into a win-win situation. And not hurting any of them, because it's Venus. Venus doesn't like conflicts at all. So here, these kind of people will be looking for ways to achieve, balance. And people with Mercury and Venus, I mean, the good aspects, the conjunction, they usually have this very rich vocabulary, and they can be like, great negotiators of any sort. So not only lawyers, but any kind of negotiations within a certain business. So yeah, bringing this win-win and balancing views, because they will have good manners. These are people who know very well when to talk, how to talk, and they will be it will be important for them to have a good face in front of others. They will be well behaved as well. So they will present themselves in a very nice way through words. And yeah, maybe also like writing, speaking, communicating on beauty matters as a whole. Anything related to the beauty industry that needs to be advertised, can be a great idea here, because they will be able to just show the good side of things in a way.
Definitely. I mean, I think you summarized it pretty well. Venus can be a money indicator in the chart. So it could be really talking about a great skill set of making money. So anything to do with the financial industry could be very suitable for them as well. Of course, Venus has got two representative side to her. So one of them is more like the beauty and the comfort. So even I can imagine, for instance, someone who is going to be making furnitures, and something which is very fashionable, or just looking out for the comfort of others. I can really imagine someone making jewelries. Mercury rules the hands, and Venus is anything to do with beauty, harmony. So it could really indicate, depending on the sign, of course, maybe if it's in Aquarius, then actually maybe creating remedies, jewelries, and bringing the remedies together through astrology. Venus generally talk about your how you want to be validated. So it could actually be a psychological aspect as well. Psychologists could have this reinforcing your validation. Venus talks about your choices you make. So actually it could be a vocational advisor, for instance, who is going to be helping you spotting your talents. And of course, the biggest meaning of Venus is relationship. So relationship counseling could really be something which might be very suitable for some people. Anything else you've got
I
on
just
top of your
wanted to
mind?
add that it's like so great that Venus and Mercury actually can only have a conjunction and a trine. Because
Exactly.
they cannot be bad to each other. They cannot be hurting each other. And having an aspect between Mercury and Venus will always have, the good sides of their collaboration, so to say.
Exactly. Venus never goes further than about 47, 48
Yeah.
degrees from the sun. So Mercury and Venus are pretty tied to the sun. So any type of, by the way, any type of business, especially in regards to fashion, for instance, could be very, very good. But then again, I've seen people, for instance, doing handmade bags with
Mhm.
these. I've seen people make, my friend actually, she is very talented with children's toys,
Oh
and
yeah.
she makes them from these cups. She spends a couple of quid, you know, in a shop, and then she makes beautiful toys out of them for children.
It might be related to this because Taurus also rules conservation, preservation, and recycling, and wanting to use something further, not to just throw things away. So it's a great thing to recycle things by creating something new. And because Mercury is really dexterous, that would be great. And yeah, that's really great, really. So. And also, I was thinking, Venus is the ruler of Taurus. It rules the senses. So anything related to food as well.
Oh yeah.
You can be a great critic because Mercury also rules Virgo. We cannot just say that Mercury is always talking nicely. So they can be a great critic of, restaurants and the food industry. They can be writing like in journalism on topics related to designing clothing, food, sensing the best fiber for a certain outfit. So yeah.
You know, for instance, when you've got this happening somehow relating to your sixth house, actually, we might be talking about allergies. And
Mhm.
then anything to do with gluten-free food, wheat allergies, and so forth. Actually, the person might be able to open up like a restaurant, especially if there is maybe a sun connection to it, or if you've got a series connection to it. Series and series, it's, well, it's now, it's not a planet. She used to be a planet, but then in 2006 she got demoted, so it's an asteroid now. But if you've got any series connection to Mercury or Venus, yeah, anything to do with allergy and food could be very, very prominent.
Yeah. So
Okay, let's have a look at Mercury and Mars.
okay, Mercury and Mars. Mars is not a very easy planet, so to say. It gives lots of fire and lots of energy, so to the mind. So it can make you, with the good aspects, it can make you a very fast thinker, someone who is able to, to make the links between certain matters very fast and take fast decisions when needed. And it gives like strong mental energy, so to say. So, but it can also make the native very competitive, and especially with the harder aspects, it can give a very sharp tongue, so to say, and you saying things that are not supposed to be said at certain places at certain time. So yeah, it can indicate being a little bit more quarrelsome or impatient. But I think that Mercury, Mars are usually reformers. They are, very eager to implement any changes, and they are not afraid because Mars has lots of courage. And maybe that's why they're not usually um, so much liked within a certain environment, working environment, because they will be driving changes which the others wouldn't like to have, but still they're like reformers in some sense. So yeah, any dynamic working environment will be very suitable for them. Like also related to physical movement, going to different places, lots of traveling involved. And of course, depending on the house position, it can be like talking about a certain profession related to this, but lots of traveling definitely, and conflict solving as well, because they will be fast to respond And yeah, they can also, with the hard aspects, I'm thinking this relationship between Mercury and Mars, it can be either too much thinking and not doing so many things. It depends on which planet will have better dignity. Or it can be like doing things and thinking later. So
Yes.
yeah, they have to be a little bit careful to have this balance between their thoughts and their actions.
You know, Mars, yes, as you described very well, it's a competitive planet, but also it has got a very logical side to it. So we've got the planet of logic with a very logical planet. So anything to do with mathematics, for instance, belong here. Anything to do with mechanism of the mechanism of any type of machineries. So engineering can really get here. For instance, someone who is going to be putting equipment together. You started really talking about that moving from one point to another. Well, transportation could really belong here. Someone who is going to put, let's say, a bus together or designing some type of vehicles and so forth. um, um,
Mechanics, you mean? Yeah, it's yeah, mechanics. It's a great option for Mars Mercury because, as you said, Mars also rules the logical mind, and when it's together with Mercury, which is very dexterous, you know, doing things with the hands, it can be a great car mechanic. Yeah, and why, not only car but any kind of vehicle. You know, it can be a ship as well, especially if Mars is in a water sign. Why not?
yes,
So,
exactly. Exactly.
yeah. Okay.
Furthermore, because this combination really could talk about, for instance, someone who is gonna teach you how to drive, so like a driving instructor, or anything to do with becoming a pilot, for instance. Mars rules speeds, and Mercury just talks about short distance travels, so getting from one point to another. That could also be a very good combination for these two together.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
I also can imagine, because Mars rules anything to do with competition. Mercury is the planet of debates and arguing and coming to some type of senses and being able to talk. So Mars does like pioneering others. So I can imagine, for instance, someone who is taking part in political debates, for instance.
Yes.
Mars always wants to pioneer someone to stand up for their own rights. So I can imagine an activist here, for instance, with this combination. If I'm not mistaken, Billie Jean King has got this combination, and she is very famous for fighting for women rights. She was the one who fought for people or women to get more salary because they used to get less than a man, for instance. Again, you know what? One of the planets needs to be more like in a competitive sign, such as Aries, Scorpio, and so on.
Yeah, and when you said Scorpio, I'm like, if it's like more this kind of Mars manifestation, it can be also a great researcher, someone who will be like digging deep within something, you know, who will be having the battle on the mental field, so to say. And it can be a great scientist as well with this
Mentioning
position.
that, yes, Mars is all about the battlefield, and Mercury is the mind and this mind. So I can really imagine someone who is, for instance, helping people with autism,
Yeah.
helping people with some type of mental problems. Even Mars rules knives and
Mm.
surgeries. So actually, it could be a brain surgeon, for
Yeah,
instance.
absolutely. Yes.
Great. How do you feel about Mercury and Jupiter?
Okay, Mercury and Jupiter. Jupiter is like a magnifying glass, you know. So he will be exaggerating and expanding our mind, our rational mind. And it will give this insatiable desire for knowledge and learning new things, and also for teaching, because when these two planets connect, Mercury is like teaching, in, as I said before, when it comes to Gemini being the planet, the sign, Mercury rules, then it's about teaching in small groups, and Jupiter expands this desire. So it's like acquiring skills to teach, because Jupiter, it represents our belief systems. So together with Mercury, it will open our mind to learn, to study different belief systems, different teachings, different philosophies, and then teach them to others. So yeah, and I think that Mercury and Jupiter, they can be great motivational speakers. They can be so contagious with their optimism, enthusiasm about something, and they they somehow truly believe what they teach. It just becomes a part of their mind, of their world. And yeah, they're very well educated, so anything, any position at the university, having a university degree, or being a university teacher, or as I said, like being kind of a motivational speaker, or also selling products could be great, because you will be, giving your beliefs. If you believe in the product, you will be great at doing this. And yeah, it's important for them to believe in what they teach, I think.
That's right. These two planets don't get along too well. They are natural enemies. And the reason being is because if you think about Gemini and Sagittarius, they are opposing sign. And then we've got the Virgo and the Pisces, they are opposing sign as well. So in any type of aspect, it can be positive as well. We're gonna have to bring them aligned. And the reason is because, you know, um, Mercury is all about um, processing things. It's all about analyzing the facts, gathering information. And Jupiter is not really good at that. Jupiter is thinking big all the time. If Jupiter is one of your life mission planet, it's all about asking the big questions and turning towards, global matters. Mercury likes dealing with local activities and so forth. But when it comes to them working or trying to work together, actually marketing one of the things which come to my mind, because Jupiter is all about global activities. So internet type of business is very good, because you are trying to sell something on social media. Um, so website, web designing can belong here. Maybe it needs a little bit of a Venus interest as well with the design part. But anyway, without Venus, they could be very good at web making. Publishing also comes to my mind. Mercury is very good at writing, and Jupiter is very good at promoting it. So any type of business promoters belong to this combination as well. Someone who is going to be, taking up the challenge and just leave it with me, give me the idea, and I'm going to start spreading the news about it, which is Mercury news. It could be, one of the interesting part with Jupiter, and maybe it's a huge difference with Mars. Mars is probably going to be more about the handmade things, something which is more physical, and not necessarily we need to use the mind so much. Well, with Jupiter, it's definitely all about using the mind.
Yes.
So anything to do with coming up with an idea rather than manifesting or going and getting that idea sorted, and it's going to be more like an intellectual type of person. So any type of academic fields belong here.
Yeah, and I was also thinking that Jupiter also rules foreign languages and foreign countries and cultures. So any kind of translating, interpretation, this can also be a good position for people who would like to deal in this field, because Mercury will be able to acquire the skills, and Jupiter will give the you being interested into learning about other countries, the cultures, and even with this position, maybe people will be inclined and have this wish to go abroad and to
That's
live
right.
abroad, or at least work internationally, because Jupiter is very much related to, collecting foreign cultures and yeah.
Yes, it could be a type of job which requires some type of exotic
Yes.
things. Maybe it's just the transport of exotic fruits, for instance, but something which is more, yes, as you said, foreign culture. It doesn't even mean that you need to live somewhere abroad, but somehow being connected
Yeah.
to foreign countries could be very important. It might be something you produce in your own home, and then you deliver that to foreign countries, and then you are
Yeah.
trying to sell them there. So
Yeah.
that's where the online part of business also kicks in.
Yeah.
Jupiter also rules royalties.
Oh yeah.
So it's very important to go big with this skill set. Um, if you think, okay, I'm gonna be able to do it in my own country, no, you should be doing that globally. So big dream, and then it comes around basically.
Yeah, that's true. And maybe with the hard aspects, the square and the opposition, it can give some difficulty to, and some kind of an unrealistic view of how things should work, and how far you can go. And it can make the native a little bit not so satisfied with the results they achieve, especially if it's an opposition. They can be thinking, why is everybody else achieving this and that, and I'm not able to manifest? And on a more psychological level, of course. So,
Sure. I'm just thinking Jupiter does talk about philosophy. Mercury is all about your speaking style. So it could really talk about, as you said, motivational speakers, but it could really talk about teachers or someone who is talking about their philosophical point of view. Maybe Mercury, Jupiter could be very good at teaching astrology, for instance, anything to do with spiritual matters. It's just basically having um, a great subject you're gonna have to pick, and Mercury is very good at that. And then taking it to the next level, and there's Jupiter.
yeah.
Okay, let's have a look at Mercury and Saturn.
Okay, Mercury and Saturn. This will make, Mercury have a very practical side, because Saturn doesn't like, doing things for nothing, so to say. So it will, make the mind very focused, very concentrated, very analytical, very pragmatic, and very methodical as well, because the Virgo sign is very methodical. So I can imagine someone like taking a pile of books, reading them all, and in a very methodical way presenting the very essence to others, because Saturn is also a teacher, and but in a different way, not like Jupiter, but in a very structured way. So having a plan, and having this aspect between Mercury and Saturn can make the person very deeply practical and very analytical. So, and they're always very responsible and always follow up on what they promise. So they're very careful what they promise as well. They're very careful with words. It's like they might not be great talkers, so to say. So I would say that for such people, it will be like easier. It will come easier to be working in some kind of isolation, because Saturn will require this for them. Otherwise, they might become too disturbed by other people, you know, and they will want their focus. So doing deep research, analysis, it will be great. So it depends on the sign, of course, but if it's in, let's say, in Scorpio or Taurus, it can be, you know, analyzing the markets, the, you know, the money and such kind of stuff. And Mercury and Saturn can be a great accountant, I think, as well,
Oh
because they
yeah.
have great focus and yeah.
It is very important with this, with these two together, to have a detail-orientated mindset. You know, so you need to have great eye for details, and they need to have plenty of patience. You know, maybe you know, some type of researches could really belong here, but also a startup company where, you know, every single step of the process is very, very important. Saturn talks about moderation. So I can imagine, for instance, anyone who, I can imagine a position where Saturn is trying to teach the youngsters how to behave. You know, this juvenile delinquency type of thing. I can definitely imagine that, because Saturn is also talking about discipline and punishment as well. Of course, it might be actually a ticket collector on a train or underground, because Saturn talks about controlling things. So having a look at what you've learned about a matter and so forth. So it also could be someone in a management position, for instance, who is checking the process of things and then controlling those. And I think what you mentioned, like the accountant job, for instance, that's one of the reasons why it could be very good for them.
Yeah,
Yes.
writing the standard operational procedures in a company. Who should do what, you know, creating this, because Saturn rules hierarchy. So like
Yeah.
making the building blocks of each level, what everybody, you know, and making the structure, what everybody should be doing, who's responsible for what, you know, they're good at this.
Yeah, any type of area management,
Yeah.
definitely, where maybe you've got more outlets in your own authority, and then you just go in, visit their operational um, stuff. I can easily imagine an auditor, for instance, someone who is going to come and, you know, check out your training files, for instance, or anything which needs to be written, maybe a health and safety risk analysis type of person. Or it really depends on the sign. For instance, if it's Virgo, actually it might be someone who is going to check, you know, the quality of work,
Yes.
or maybe it's going to check the hygiene department and so on.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely.
Is there anything else, Dan?
No, not really. I think that's
Yeah, I
quite
think
complete.
we covered the essence of that.
Yes.
Of that. By the way, it just popped into my mind. Saturn does talk about elderly people, so maybe it could even indicate, you know, a way of communicating with elderly people. Somehow, it might be actually a doctor who is maybe a doctor who is working, for instance, in a in a
Elderly home,
yeah, in an elderly home, for
hospice,
instance. Yeah,
or
that's the
something
word I
like this.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
Mhm.
Taking care of other people's minds and so on.
And Saturn, Mercury also, they are maybe a little bit slower to learn new skills and new you know, they're not so fast like with other planets, but when once they learn it, they know it forever, because
Oh
it
yeah.
goes like they have great memory, so they may be slower, but it's like it stays forever. I have this, and yeah, that's true. it takes
I've
time, but once I do it, I'm like, you know.
I've got Mercury in Capricorn, so sometimes it might take a little bit longer for me as well to learn things. I guess it really depends on the fact as well how much I'm interested in things. But I'm gonna tell you a funny story. I went for driving lessons, and the driving instructor said I'm hopeless, I'm useless, and that was on my second lesson, and I was so pissed off because of it. And then I fired him straight away. I said, you know what, I can find a better teacher. How can you tell me that on the second day? And he was even screaming at me. And I so wanted to tell him I've got bloody Mercury in Capricorn. It takes me a little bit longer to get it. But
Yeah,
hey, I'm gonna find
you know.
someone else instead.
Yeah, you will find someone else who will be like motivating you the right way, at least, because Mercury in Capricorn, maybe just like Mercury and Saturn, they need to see the practical, you know, benefit of doing something, why I should be doing this. They need to know the explanation behind why certain things should happen. It's like they build some kind of structure within them.
Yeah,
So, yeah, and it takes time.
exactly.
I know it as well. So,
You know,
but
I think another key success factor to this combination is the organizing ability. So I can even imagine again a wedding planner. I can
yeah.
imagine any event coordinator type of job here, because as I said, Saturn and Mercury together will pay attention to the details, every single tiny details they're gonna pick up on. So yes, event planners
Yes,
also very, very good for them.
absolutely. I agree.
Even the engineering parts, actually,
Yeah, and
because of the
construction as well.
Aquarian interest, and the Mercury does talk about technology. So someone who follows up again on the process of whether the safety of those equipment are right or not, even someone who might be actually proving texts and writings. So
Yeah.
I'm going to read this through. Does that make any sense? Is that grammatically correct? So it can be an editor, it can be a lecturer who is going to um, check out you know, whether it's right or wrongly written. And I also can imagine a speech therapist,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
someone
Logopedist.
controlling your speech, right? Mercury,
Yeah.
controlling the pronunciation of words.
Logopeds, I think they're called.
Yes,
Yes. So,
logopedia,
yeah. I
yeah.
have a friend who has Saturn and Mercury conjunction, by the way, and she's a logoped. She works with children who have difficulties. They stutter, and yeah, that's absolutely confirmed. And
Yes,
also, when you mentioned engineering, I was also thinking about architects and people who build, you know, constructions of big buildings, and yeah, they're
you
able
know,
to.
also selling antique
Yeah,
things is very Saturn and Mercury
yeah, because
energy.
Saturn rules old stuff. So
Yes, old and ancient
yeah.
things. You know what? In that case, I can even imagine. I don't even know how they are called in English all of a sudden, but the ones who are looking for, like, you know, digging up graves and then finding ancient
Uh,
objects.
archaeologist.
Yes, that's the word. Yeah, also really could be the case, especially if these two planets somehow relate to Cancer,
Oh yeah.
because Cancer was the past. Cancer Capricorn axis could really talk about such field.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to Uranus.
Oh, Uranus and Mercury, they're so good together because Uranus is actually the higher octave of Mercury. So even the hard aspects are good ones, I think, because they make the mind so well, not always, of course, but they make the mind so progressive, so insightful, and it's like uh, almost a genius intellect, and you know, this revolutionary, innovative, out of the box thinking. it comes with Mercury and Uranus, and it can be very rebellious though, and not wanting to follow the rules, so it can create some issues, of course. But this will only be because they are so insightful and they're so much ahead of their time. They just see that something is not supposed to be done the way it is done, because it's not working to the right purpose, and so yeah, this can create some difficulties. But also Uranus rules astrology and psychology, so I think that great astrologers will come here if they have an aspect. And maybe a weak point here will be a weak nervous system though, because Uranus rules the nervous system. And yeah, but still being able to feel the pulse of the economy of any system without the center, so to say. So like being a great neurological doctor,
Yes.
or yeah, a doctor for the skin, because the skin is also such a system without the center. Dermatologist, it's called.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
missing some words. So, and also very good with technologies, anything innovative, IT, and also Uranus rules television. So many options here. I think we can spend the whole day to enumerate them, but yeah, this combination is really great. And also with the good aspects, it gives great memory, I think. So they're fast thinkers, and they can like remember, very alert, and they have very original ideas, so they can also be very good at marketing and advertising, especially. So selling and creating visionary stuff as well. So yeah, and we mentioned this with Mercury, and what was it, I think Mars. But here also I think physics, mathematics, and all those maths related science will be very good. And yeah, so anything related to this, any profession related to this, as well as science as well. But when I think of science, of a scientist here, I will be thinking more like of Einstein type, who will be like a little bit
I know what word you're looking for, because whenever I see a prominent Uranus in the chart, I always suggest clients that they need a wacky type of job,
Yes.
which is out of norm, which is they need to have an idea which people might not have thought of, on a lower. Well, I don't even use that word of lower manifestation, because actually I saw a video yesterday about an 83-year-old lady, and she's still a flight attendant, and she's been doing it for 60 years, and that could really be a Uranian Mercury field, actually. But again, we're talking about a very sophisticated technology here. So something which which is new and we haven't really seen yet. So the speaking cars and the self-driving cars, for instance, is something which would belong here.
All of those sorry to interrupt you, just came to my mind, all those movies which are fantasies and the future stuff, they are made by someone with Mercury Uranus, I'm sure.
Yes, exactly. Yes, as you said, it's anything to do with coming up with a genius idea, and then just breaking through the market, basically. So there is nothing much to say about it. Any type of internet based business surely belongs here. But with internet type of business, I always say that there needs to be great connection to the moon as well, because moon is going to be your buyers. Moon is going to be the public who is going to buy the product from you. If moon is not really supporting this idea, it might mean that actually they're not going to buy your product, even though that's the bestest idea ever.
Yeah.
So you might need a partner who is supporting that, that idea with their moon, for instance, and then the person is going to be able to sell that for you. Definitely, this is the position where I would say the person needs to be in self-employment.
Yes.
So Uranus is someone who is not necessarily the greatest at teamwork. However, it's a team playing planet, but Uranus, similarly to Sun and Mars, has got this egoistic side to him. So it's all about me and me. And once Uranus is not followed, then it becomes an explosive energy.
Oh yeah.
Anything to do with catastrophe. Uh, oh, I'm breaking my table here. Anything to do with catastrophe could belong here. Anything to do with weather forecasts. Forecasting, the word itself, is a Mercury and Uranian trait. So prediction. So, for instance, sometimes people ask me about astrology, and I made a video on that. So I'm going to put the link below. What type of indications you've got to become a psychic or an astrologer. It's a short 17-18 minute video, so I hope you will have time to look at it. But astrology is such a huge topic itself. So the whole idea here, especially for instance, talking about Mercury, which rules Virgo, and Virgo talks about specializing in a field and then becoming a master of it. So, for instance, a Mercury and Uranian person need to be focusing more on predictive astrology. But maybe if you've got a Uranus and the moon type of astrology indication in your chart, you know what? Maybe you're gonna have to become a relocation astrologer. Maybe if you've got a very strong sixth house, then you need to become like a lifestyle type of a medical astrologer and so forth. So even we can break that down into different segments and then be more specific exactly what fields to go towards to.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And
That-
Uranus, when I think about Uranus, it's like I can imagine the Milky Way, the whole cosmos. It's like being able to be in touch with this. So great insights from coming from nowhere. And when you said about this shadow side of, because I have Uranus in the first house and I have a trine to Mercury, so I very much somehow relate to this energy. And it's like really you want to do it for the group. You are like looking at a further perspective about a certain goal, but then it can become quite personal as well.
yes.
I agree.
Surely it can, and as I think it's important to mention, but Mercury and Uranus together are very much ahead of their time, and sometimes they are not recognized in their own lifetime, and maybe they're gonna get recognized a lot later, unfortunately. Yes.
Yeah, true. But yeah. I think this Jules Verne, the author of this submarine, how was it called? Um, he was writing about submarines like 200 years ago when nobody ever knew about this. And he has
Hmm.
this aspect, I think. So also a writer. Um,
A
yeah,
fiction,
a
especially fiction.
fiction
Yeah.
writer could be a great possibility here.
Let's have a look at Mercury and Neptune.
Oh, Mercury and Neptune.
Let's
This
get
would be like,
confused.
yeah, they are confused because they are like, so they have such a rich imagination. Neptune will be bringing all these insights and dreamy mind. They are so sensitive to the environment, and it's like they might be thinking things which are not theirs even. I think like absorbing what's in the environment. So they can change their mind so often at one point where when they're with certain people they can be like so firm believers into something, and then they go into another group and they totally reject what they said, and now they're strong followers of something else. But somehow they have a great intuition within them, and this, I think this helps them, you know, make the connection between the rational mind and to somehow make the correct decisions when they need to. But when they focus on thinking and analyzing, yeah, they have a hard time with this. So I
Getting
think,
lost in details.
yeah, they get totally lost in details, and I think that they really have to trust their intuition a lot. And yeah, maybe also because Neptune is a little bit, you know, escapist, it can show some kind of escapism, and also the need to, you know, to isolate yourself. So I can imagine very well any kind of artists, musicians, you know, anything related to this beautiful Neptunian energy, and people being able to, you know, to go deep into the ocean of feelings, of emotions, and produce and manifest something beautiful in the material world. So they don't have to communicate with words, because Mercury is a little bit, you know, having a hard time to have the correct words to communicate, but they can write a beautiful song that touches so very deep parts of you that you will totally know what they want to say, what they mean to say. So it's a very expressive combination, I think. It's you know, and also great writers, they're very good at reading symbols, I think, as well, because Neptune is all about symbols, and dream readers as well, and healers, not, yeah, because Neptune is also all about healing, so they can be healing through art, through, you know, they can be teaching in small groups, or children as well, art, music, any kind of artistic stuff generally.
Yes. You know, Neptune could really talk about health matters. So I can imagine someone working for some type of charity event, for instance, trying to raise awareness over some very rare type of conditions, or just think about the cancer research group type of energy, what is very popular nowadays, and I think it's very noble as well, because Neptune talks about the underprivileged people. But also, this combination could talk about a profession which you could be good at, related to your obsessions. So, how to give up smoking, how to give up drinking, and someone who can advise you on those. You know, what can you do if you were raped, and how to report that to the police, and so forth. Also, anything to do with an illusionist, so a magician and stuff like that could belong here. Neptune does rule illusions. Another thing which comes to my mind is someone who has got great psychic abilities. Of course, we're talking about Mercury, who was the god of messages. So we're talking about Hermes, and delivering the messages between the earth and the gods, or the humans and the gods. So the psychic abilities, or psychics basically, could really belong here. I can imagine skill set around photographs. So taking pictures of something. The sign is going to show you again how. Maybe if it's in Taurus, then it's going to be about nature. If it's Virgo, then it's going to be something to do with animals. If it's in Libra, maybe it's something to do with people, modelings, and so forth. By the way, models also could belong to this Mercury and Neptune combination, because Mercury tends to be a skinny planet. A prominent Mercury talks about skinny but proportional type of, oh, this proportionized word came to my mind, which might not be even a word, but I see that I saw that in a series, and they used proportionized there as a. And anyway, it's just funny for me. It might not be funny for others. Only the ones who saw that.
It won't be.
But
It won't be. It's yeah. It didn't. make me think of something,
Yeah, I know. It's just funny because of
international.
the series I saw a couple of years ago. Um, um, yes. So anything to do with those photographs, it could be something to do with someone who likes exhibiting things. Of course, Neptune is all about being in the background, but because Neptune rules the camera and the fame in regards to movies, when you are captured, somehow an essence of something is captured that belongs to Neptune. So an exhibition of any sort could really belong here as well. And you know what? It might be an exhibition of workplaces, right?
Mm.
Come here, and then I'm gonna, have different type of stores of work places, and they're gonna introduce what they do, and so on.
It's like selling people dreams in some way, and also this advertising, any kind of advertisement is a dream we wish could come true. So also this type of modeling, you being the model for something which people really wish to have, is here as well. So also being on the front scene, if you have, other aspects as well, like Venus on the ascendant, let's say. But it can be because Neptune has this energy and this possibility somehow to present to, you become like a reflection of what others want to see. It's like Neptune doesn't have a face. It's like people see what they project. It's only reflecting. And so it's I think it's a very good position for someone who will be reflecting other people's wishes and increase sales in a way.
I'm just giggling here because it came to my mind on one of my students when we were talking about career possibilities, and we mentioned the Neptune and the Mercury aspect. We described it and so on, and then she came out, like she said, "Oh, then it can be a politician as well." And I was like, "How does politics relate to Neptune and Mercury?" And then she was like, "Oh well, Neptune is the deceit, when you deceit in others, and the politicians lie all the time anyway." So I was like,
Yeah.
"That's funny," and there is a little bit of a truth in it.
Yes, as well, unfortunately.
I never looked at politician charts whether they've got Neptune and Mercury indications in their chart, but I found it funny. We were laughing for at least 5 minutes. Okay, and last but not least, Mercury and Pluto.
Mercury and Pluto. Okay, so this will be again another analytical and deep thinker, someone who will be devoted to research and who will be like involved in some kind of conspiracy theories, even when it comes to an extreme. But anyway, Pluto is the planet of extremes, so we can expect that. It's
Yes.
not. So, but it will also give this great concentration, very deep mind, affinity to research, getting to the bottom of the problem. And I think that this is another position like Mercury and Neptune for people who are psychic, and they're like able, like the surgeons of the mind. They're like able to see the hidden motives, because Pluto is everything that is hidden, and Mercury is what we say, but Pluto can see what you don't say somehow.
Yes.
So they can read between the lines. They're very good investigators. Like I can imagine intelligence services here. Anybody working involved into this, and also hypnotizing others, because Pluto is very hypnotic. They can, they I think Mercury and Pluto can have such a great impact on other people's energy if they
Yes.
develop this. It's like they, when they enter a certain space, everybody knows they're there somehow. They have this strong field. It's, but yeah, on a more extreme part, they can be like a little bit too paranoid sometimes, going to extremes, because Pluto is an extreme planet and they can be too suspicious of something. But this can be great for detective work, intelligence services, being an investigator of some kind, and also like an auditor. This will be the worst type of auditor because they will be like so nice and smiling, and they will be digging out the deepest truths from you, you know, and but they're very good at this. They can do it. They have this smiling face, but then behind. And also Mercury was the only, you know, Hermes was the only one who was allowed to talk to Hades. This is Pluto practically. So Hades had this respect for Mercury, and Mercury was the only one who could go and negotiate with him to let Persephone's
Yes.
to go to her mom. So they're, you know, they have this communication. They're good with each other. So they're like,
You know, while you were talking about the investigative journalism type of description you gave and so forth, in the meantime, I was like, I'm sure Sherlock Holmes somehow belonged to the Pluto Mercury energy. And then I looked up, and the author has got a Pluto and the Mercury conjunction.
Agatha Christie, really?
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. So
So
yeah.
a Pluto and the Mercury energy going on there. So it's just great. Another author who was really much writing detective stories is Arthur Conan Doyle. And he has got a Pluto Mercury conjunction going on in the sign of Taurus as well.
Oh
So it's
yeah.
just brilliant.
Yes, by the way, that's really good to know. Great examples of these great manifestations, because Mercury rules writing, communication, and Pluto rules investigation. So this is a great way to actually manifest, and somehow, you know, all these, because Mercury and Pluto, they tend to be like very suspicious, really, and this is a great way to manifest it on another level, not in your personal relationship, for example, you know, so they can just put it into the books and everybody's happy, so to say.
Yes, you know, the investigative journalism definitely belongs here. But also, you know, those people, those psychologists, for instance, who are dealing with hostage situations.
Yes.
Pluto rules hostages. And of course, Mercury is the communication. So let's talk them out of any type of crisis situation. Or people who want to commit suicide. Let's say they want to jump off, you know, a cliff or a building, and someone comes around and then talk to them. Of course, Pluto is the higher manifestation of Mars. So any type of police meta in regards to mixing that with a little bit of a psychology and so forth could belong here. And you know, Pluto Mercury together is all about investigating how the brain functions. So a behavior analyst could belong here. Profilist could belong here. Yes, these are some of these interesting jobs which come to my mind with those.
Yeah, and psychologists as well, who are like uh, performing these past life regressions and hypnosis. I think I mentioned it already. I'm
Yes,
sorry if I repeat.
hypnosis. You know, even the sexologists belong here
Yes,
also.
absolutely.
You know, especially those ones who wanting to raise awareness, for instance, to youngsters, the youth,
Yeah.
how to, you know, what is condom for, and so on.
Yeah, and any kind of abuse is here probably, you
Yes.
know, because
Abuse
Pluto
therapy.
is yeah, related to abuse. So being a, you know, being a psychologist and helping people go out, because Pluto is also a healing energy. It's like, but it's more like you went through certain things, and it's yeah, you now can heal those who go through the same. So yeah, any kind of abusive behaviors. Yeah, they
Chemistry belongs here as well. So anything to do with medicine and medicine research, medical fields could also belong here, but more to do with the researching part. Yeah, so a pharmacist
Yeah.
could be indicated by this. Um, Again, maybe a speech therapist also, because especially if someone is like stuttering, especially in the third house, Pluto is going to be talking about the controlling. So how to control the tongue. Tongue is ruled by Mercury. So, and so, yeah. So that could be something again which belong here.
And also all those people who have psychosomatic issues, this will be here as well, because Pluto will be able to see the you know the core of the issue of the problem, and then bring it to the surface, so as to dissolve in a way.
Well, great. I think there is plenty of information in this video, and I hope it is helpful for everyone. So if you like the video, you know you should press like and maybe subscribe to the channel. And you know what? It only costs you a second to share this video with others, but it might mean quite a lot for Tsveti and myself. So if you would like to book a reading with us, you're gonna be able to find the link below, as well as the link for the how to spot the money in your chart webinar as well. Tsveti will be one of the moderators, so she's gonna answer any questions during the presentation which I might not be able to cover, or you might have got a specific question about your own chart. She will be more than happy to help you out there and then with a couple of tips. Thank you very much, Sveti, for joining me today.
Thank you, Victor. It was a great pleasure, and thank you everybody for watching it and sharing it.
Thank you very much. We will be back with planets in the sixth house sometime in the future, in the near future. Thank you and stay blessed. Bye-bye.